So good morning, guys. I'm at the gym early this morning and I want to speak to you all about something. Guys, there are like so many red flags that we see in people that are just absolutely obvious, and it can happen to pretty much anybody, but there are selective things that happen in particular that are flags that are inflamed, okay? A torch that has been set for certain individuals, okay? Certain people who unfortunately are somewhat awakened to certain things and certain aspects of people, okay? So when you are one of those people, many a times you may have come from a past where you had a lot of difficulty growing up in your household, where you probably in most cases had either a toxic parent or a toxic caregiver. That toxicity can come in several different forms. There are instances where you may have been the one that was over sheltered. You may have been the one who was overloved, okay, and that can be considered toxicity as well. It is not only in reference to direct physical or abuse, okay, for all the women who may have suffered from that within your families. So with that being said, that much of the abuse may be coming from a caregiver or a parent. It is oftentimes difficult for the child or the adult child to understand what's exactly going on. You know that you are being maltreated. You know that you are not being loved as you would like to be loved. But when you are so used to not receiving love, you will pretty much take anything. Much of what we experience in most cases is unfortunately something that is absolutely detrimental to not just a child, but to a full adult, okay? Psychological warfare is something that many of those who are children and that may not be as subjective to certain things, unbeknownst to not knowing exactly why things are the way that they are. So typically there are children like myself. I was one of those children who had a lot of questions for a lot of things that were happening in my life that I did not feel was right or justified, pertaining to not just myself but also other family members. Having an innate understanding even as a child that something is not quite right with my family, okay? And not that we judge our family members, but we try our best to love the hell out of them. Not knowing as a kid that we're actually enabling their behavior, but we figure that if only we could love them enough, maybe they would have some love to give over to us. Yet, we continue to find out that we are just hitting a brick wall. Once we continue to see these kind of behaviors as a child, most likely you are either going to do one or two things. And both of those things, unfortunately, if you are a child, you are going to be exposed by your family members. So they are fully aware that you are not being your true and authentic self, which regardless of which decision you choose to make to either conform or to stand alone, you are still going to be abused and tortured. Regardless of how much submission I did when I was growing up as a kid, I still unfortunately received consequences because there were just some things that I were not going to comply with, which oftentimes got me in a whole lot of trouble. So majority of the things that occurred in my life, unbeknownst to me at that time, was due to being punished by my parental guidance. These are some signs that you are being tortured by your loved ones, who are supposed to be your loved ones, in other words. The number one sign is a sign that people often perceive as normal when you are in a toxic household that you do not know is toxic. They don't see you as human, let alone want to see you thrive in life. What they're going to do is they are going to set specific stages for you to fail in life, which requires them to torment you. Psychological warfare is typically what they use in order to torment you. So they're going to start, number one, they're going to start gaslighting you. They're going to tell you what you're experiencing is not true, that in fact you are imagining these things. The second thing that they're going to do, they're going to start gossiping about you if they haven't already started that, because that typically starts the moment they see you as a threat. The third thing would be messing with your sleeping patterns, okay? So you will not ever get a moment in time of peace. You are going to forever be awakened by a demonic demon. And majority of the time, they're going to be, of course, a parent or a guardian. Okay? So, We often wonder why we are not able to get the proper sleep or get any peace around a specific person. Perhaps there is something that we might be doing. Because if you are someone who happens to be more introverted or an empath, of course you are going to what? Introspect, which is a natural thing for us to do. The immense amount of information that your family has about you, unbeknownst to you, is quite surprising. They know exactly who you are. They know that you have an innate ability to be able to detect certain things. This is psychological warfare. You are typically surrounded by someone who doesn't want to see you sleep. And this is a message for you guys out there. There are a lot of women, okay, who are in fact unhealthy women who do not want to see you sleep, okay? So you may have a woman who seems and may appear attention seeking, but in fact, she's after something far more sinister. Number 2 is oversensitivity. When you are someone who is a logical person, and not only just that, you are emotionally intelligent, you may be surrounded by an individual who is overly sensitive. And when I say overly sensitive, I do not mean in the way that you are not being considerate towards that individual, but majority of the arguments and disputes that you have with this individual is absolutely nonsense. Confusion and always having to walk on eggshells, that you cannot see anything to this individual without them feeling offended. That is a major one, okay? And we're not talking about when you are an empath, because oftentimes empaths are able to sense certain things and they will ask you, what is it that you mean? I'm talking about when somebody is creating a whole whirlpool of chaos that is absolutely unnecessary and leaves you up in a state of confusion. And you notice this is something that this person gets pure bliss out of, because all of a sudden, now that you are riled up, they are suddenly calm. Last but least, most important is not knowing exactly where you stand with an individual. If you are always in a state of confusion as to your relational dynamic with an individual, there is clearly reason, very much so reason for you to bail out, okay? Simply because of the fact that this, when you are dealing with a person who is intentionally causing confusion as to your relational dynamic, it is simply because that person wants you to somehow try to figure out what the problem is, when in fact, majority of the time, there is no problem and they are the problem.